You made it to the end. And this is an applause for yourselves as well, so it's a good job for staying around with us. Thank you.
Awesome, so I'll just jump into it. So this is, I guess, about marketing Astroneer up until when we kind of conceived the game, up until our early access launch. So I'm Gravatt. I'm a developer at System Era Softworks. I guess a quick summary of the game and kind of the background is we spent really 3 years, almost 3 years of developing Astroneer, and then really 2 years up until we actually decided to announce the game. So it was kind of a while of really growing our team, kind of figuring out what worked, what we wanted to do, and yeah, just kind of going through all the growing pains of creating a studio and figuring out what kind of worked best for Astroneer and the game we wanted to make. And so really what we kind of settled on was gameplay first, everything else was second. And what that really kind of meant was, yeah, we were marketing the game throughout, but really wanted to focus on the core, building out the game. And that really meant finding ways to do high-value marketing with low team impact. So things that just basically wouldn't take time away, since really time was the most important resource we had. And obviously money was an option because we were a small indie team at the time, and even when we did have investment funds, we put them straight back into the game and not into any kind of marketing budget. So yeah, it was all about finding ways of using our time to the best value. And best way to do that really right off the bat is kind of knowing our advantage and knowing your advantage. So, and that kind of stems from what's our unfair advantage as a team or as a game. And since we came from a AAA studio, or all of us came from AAA, we can kind of really do special things that maybe some other teams couldn't. And for us, it was really honing in the color and visuals of the game, and we decided on a low poly art style, partly from kind of the production side of things and how that changed our development pipelines, but also just from the striking look of it. And I guess 3 years ago at the time, there weren't too many low poly games. They've kind of gotten popular since. They kind of become the pixel art of indie games now, but at the time it was really special and unique. And at the same time, the deformation and shaping and change in the worlds was a unique thing about Astroneer, and how you can kind of dig through anything and mold things. And our elevator pitch even was, if Minecraft is Legos, ours is Play-Doh. So that's kind of, so yeah, we were AAA developers moving into indie space, and that was kind of one of our advantages we had, right? We had really solid world-class artists on the team and really great programmers to kind of develop great tech. And so by knowing those things everything else kind of going forward was made easy once you kind of know what your strengths are. It's easier to know how to pursue those. And Twitter is actually a great way of leveraging those strengths. So because we had great artists, there's a really great community of artists already on Twitter that we could leverage and promote our game to. And so right off the bat, that's the first thing we did when we wanted to kind of tease stuff. It was jumping on Twitter and kind of posting an image or a video or a GIF kind of, and teasing these concepts. And it was a great way of testing those waters to see, okay, is this idea better than the other one? Or really kind of A/B testing what resonated well with our audience the most. And that later on kind of helped develop how we talked about the game in the future when we were doing more high-level marketing. And what was benefited of Twitter was because we kind of were already in that space as well from using those artists' contacts, it was genuine sharing. It felt authentic. It wasn't that we were marketing as much as just sharing to a group of friends. And yeah, so building that kind of ecosystem of our first community was really truly built off the artist pipeline or artist community that was built in Twitter. And yeah, so it's actually a great way to kind of give a pulse of the interest in your game too. That's not going to be the thing for everyone, but for our game, it was a great way of like kind of seeing if actually people wanted to even listen to the game or listen about it. So yeah, so one thing that's probably well known here is Screenshot Saturday was a huge thing that we did, and it was kind of a consistent weekly update we would do of growing our community, but also, again, testing the waters, showing stuff off, and then still slowly growing our community that knew of the game. Yeah, and again, Twitter is a great way to experiment with ideas of just showing stuff. And yeah, we leveraged the game dev community. That was our first kind of community of influencers that knew about the game. And yeah, so we just kind of did that for a little bit. And the important thing to know is really knowing when the right time to first show off your game was. And for us, it was once we got the core concept of the motion and the look of the game. We spent 2 years of just trying to figure what that was out in the first place, but once it kind of locked in of what it looked like, then we started showing. You don't want to show too early, so it's really kind of up to you, and it was kind of a gut feeling of what time is right for us. And yeah, so one thing we found was if a picture is worth 1,000 words, a GIF playing at 10 frames a second must be worth 10,000 words. So GIFs were our baby back then, and it was just a way of like just kind of standing out because the game was always easier to sell when in motion. Like back to our strengths was the visual style of the game was one of our core strengths of the game. The game looks great when it's in motion and when all that thing comes together. So the lighting engine, everything. So that was one reason we switched to GIFs. Is screenshots did okay, but GIFs were better. And then obviously, yeah, we cheated at Screenshot Saturday, but that's okay. We didn't care. And so yeah, it's all about finding that shareable content, that stuff that that's easy to see. It's in motion, so it attracts the eye, especially in social media where you're scrubbing through things and you might ignore a photo, but something in motion might be more naturally attract your eye and attention to. So yeah, so we kind of teased it on Twitter, and it helped us gain confidence right off the bat of what our product was and what Astroneer was, and it helped us formulate, okay, how do we talk about the game? How do we kind of sell it? And really up and before our announcement, we were really just focused on building out the game and finding an investor and finding money for it. And that kind of subsided once we were talking about announcing the game. And yeah, teasing, all that kind of built up into this, and it was really time to formulate how to announce the game. And our really goals weren't much more than hopefully a lot of people hear about the game and know about the game. It wasn't much broader than that. We just wanted to have an audience that cared about Astroneer. So obviously a big portion of that is press, and that's where we kind of focused on how to announce the game, is getting high-level press to talk about it. And to kind of accomplish that, we basically needed a way to sell the game to the press before we could sell the game to the public. And a big portion of doing that is identifying the narrative of the game and the team. And I don't mean like the story of the game. It's like, what is your press release going to talk about? You don't want to just say, hey, this is a game in space and you do things in it. It has to be a little bit more personal than that. So, because they don't, more traditional press doesn't just copy and paste your press release. You have to actually have a story to tell. So yeah, like the question is, why should they cover you? And again, I guess an example of a solid press release where you're talking about your narrative is something like Stardew Valley, where it was some guy by himself in his house where he lived and worked 4 years, like 70-hour weeks, making this game by himself. And so that's a really meaty story. And so for us, we talked about how we formed as a team, and we went from AAA and to indie, and what that meant and why we chose that route, and how as a team we all bonded over this love of space and love of exploration, and kind of this romanticizing how in the future people will travel to the stars, but we're kind of in the non-explorer age, and where Astroneer might be the next best thing to kind of discover that. So that was kind of our hook and what we sold. And that really helped actually draw attention to us, and we got actually a lot of coverage from the press because we actually didn't just copy and paste, mail blast all the AAA press and hope they see it, because you have to realize they're also getting hundreds of emails a day, and it's just a ton of noise, and so you have to actually sell them something. It's a two-way street. So yeah, and I guess everything got packaged up. That's trailer, press release, website, images, press kit. And that's kind of the first time we really broke that rule I was saying of gameplay first. You do want to take a little bit of time, and we found building up to that and kind of prepping really helped us out. It created this full package, and it didn't seem rushed or anything. And again, that kind of fits into what our strength of the game was, which was this very good visual game that looked great. So it was worth kind of the effort of kind of spending development time away and building that up. So I guess another thing to talk about is it's great to take advantage when opportunistic times appear. And for us, we announced the game the second week of October. And the first week of October, there was this kind of big movie out that time in 2015, which was about space. It was about a guy that kind of got left behind on Mars. And yeah, so The Martian came out right before us. And it was really fortuitous for us that there was this movie that fit kind of not identically with our theme of Astroneer, but it emotionally was sort of similar. And so we leveraged that. Obviously, we didn't plan for this big movie to come out and be popular, and we released a game around it. But because we were a small team and not some giant studio that has all these plans like 6 months in advance, we could actually be agile and figure out how to leverage this to our advantage. And like, so even in the trailer, you have kind of a scene that sort of mimics certain aspects of that movie. And it worked really well. So when they actually talked about the game first time, it was a ton of it was Minecraft meets The Martian, which is exactly what we wanted as a headline. And so that feeling that was in the trailer conveyed really well to the way people talked about the game. And it was a great way to get views and just basically hit our goal of hopefully a lot of people know about the game. So yeah, that went really well for us on the actual announcement. And so a ton of press covered us. We got a lot of views on the trailer. Everything went well. And so now is actually to build an actual strategy, not just like, let's throw some stuff together and hope we get coverage. And so this was the strategy that we kind of formulated and came up with from our announcement onto our early access release. And that kind of, we looked at the game and kind of looked at where the best way we could sell the game. And it was always going to be a word-of-mouth game. We weren't going to have a multi-million-dollar budget to do TV spots or whatever. It was going to be a purely word-of-mouth game that was going to make or break Astroneer. And we looked at it and saw these three kind of key bullet points, which is obviously going back, the look and color of the game is our biggest strength. It's striking, it's very visually pleasing, it's unique. We had unique controls and a diegetic UI. So that, for those who don't know, diegetic is like things in the world. So there was no 2D UI in the world. It was all 3D overlays and like holograms. So it was very easy to look at and pick up what was happening. There was no ton of inventory systems or menus. So that was a key component that set us apart from other games. And the discovery and co-op aspect of it. So again, like our passion was like discovering planets and venturing out in the solar system. So that aspect and then doing it all with a friend. So multiplayer became a huge critical component in building out the game, and that was always going to be a huge selling point, and it was going to spread the word of mouth of the game as well. When you have a friend in the playground that's playing this game and you're going to want them to join you. So yeah, it's really important. It was really important for us, and I think for other games, to know what your differentiators are, right? Like those were kind of the key components, the deformation as well, that were going to really set us apart from everyone else. So really that's going to change based on the game, but for us, these were our things that we really wanted to keep pushing as much as possible. So it was always falling back to that. So YouTube is also, as you heard all today, it's streaming and content creators are the next big thing, but they've been around for a while. And YouTube was going to give us that. So the word-of-mouth game really fits well with the YouTube audience of playing and discovery and multiplayer. So after the announce, we really focused on, honed in on growing our industry contacts. So we had a ton of AAA experience and knew a ton of AAA people from GDC or just working with them, but we didn't really know a ton of people outside that were kind of the industry tastemakers, so press or YouTubers, whatever. So we used shows such as PAX East, E3, and PAX West as ways of kind of being all in the same room, in the same city as all these people, and kind of getting to know them and meeting them and just networking in general. So that was all building towards the successful release of just kind of setting up these meetings at these shows, networking, getting in contact with press, and setting up these like quick little meetings, interviews, but it was all building towards how we were going to release a successful game when it came time to email keys and actually have them talk about the the release of the game. And I guess it's important to note that these shows are really great for meeting people and having them play your game. And they're awesome, like hardcore audience that are going to really talk about your game a lot if they have a great experience. But even for us, we had like 2 to 3 PCs running at a show, 10-minute, 15-minute play sessions, couple days out of the weekend. You're not really going to get a ton of people playing the game, with probably like 400, 500 max. So that's not really a great return on your investment. If they all bought the game or all talked about the game, that's not a ton. But it was always because the press was there and those YouTubers there, we actually could communicate them wholeheartedly and actually really foster those connections. So yeah, YouTube was our bread and butter. It was all about, as we were developing the game, it was all about getting content creators on board and getting them really interested in Astroneer and working with us. So it started out really early on because I guess none of us were really big fans of watching Let's Plays or anything, but it was researching, kind of really understanding that world and what that meant. And so we did a lot of our own time researching and understanding these YouTube channels and the demos that were on them and how they presented their content. And it's really important that we didn't just grab a spreadsheet off the internet and just mail blast these people, hey, play the game. It was really just kind of honing in on what they wanted for their audience. And so we really started having intimate kind of connections with these people and talking to them, speaking to them at shows. And it was casting a wide net, but that fit what the audience of Astroneer was. And part of that was, as that research phase was finding the YouTubers that had success, but weren't like full-blown million channel subscribers that had a ton, because they're going to be less apt to kind of connect with us. We had a few that reached out to us alone, but most of the time it was these smaller channels that had really good growth, that you could see in their numbers that they were growing. And since we knew we were going to come out in a year or so, we kind of invested in a couple that we thought, okay, these guys are going to be big in a year. And it paid off really well for a couple of them, where they maybe had 100,000 when we first talked to them, and they're currently like at a million or more. So that kind of, you're growing the game with them as they're growing their channel, and they're looking for content for themselves. So just like talking to the press, you kind of have to know what you bring to the table, and that was really important for us to understand right away of what is Astroneer to them. And it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And the game isn't the entertainment so much as it's a platform for those channels to entertain their viewers. And that kind of stems from the emergent gameplay, and Astroneer really benefited well for us. The multiplayer really worked well. So it's not, hey, here, play our game, advertise for us. It's how can we both work together to create content for your viewers that's enjoyable. And that helped actually being at shows like PAX, is talking to them directly, getting their feedback of things about the game, of how their audience would react to these certain systems. So it's worth pointing out, at all this time we're developing the game, there was this other game out there that kind of we were in the shadow of. And it's sci-fi setting, space exploration, procedural planets, traveling between planets in a solar system, stylized art direction, mining, crafting, large multiplayer component. That's like the back of the box for us. And obviously that's No Man's Sky. And that was a big game, right? They had the marketing machine of Sony. They were on stage at E3 showing the game to millions. And it was kind of this sort of fear that we had, right? Of this other game that's almost like us, but sort of different, that is going to swallow us up and eat our lunch. But that's kind of a dangerous thing that you can get in, is chasing like a giant like that. And instead, we kind of focused on how we talked about the game, and really just doubled down on those strengths that I mentioned earlier. So we just kind of re-honed what Astroneer was and what its strengths were. And it was no longer chasing what No Man's Sky did really well. It was doing what we did well. And again, it's the look of the game, the gameplay that we have, that we feel strongly about, that multiplayer, cooperative element, Yeah, and so when we talked about the game, we talked more intimately about it. And so for a while, we would talk about our procedural planets, but again, No Man's Sky was doing that better. So we stopped talking about that because it wasn't a selling point anymore. It just gave us bad comparisons. We talked about how intimate the player's relationship is, how you can deform terrain, you base build, you craft these things in one solar system, and you feel really connected to it. Oh, this thing wants to do a Windows update. Hang on, sorry. Yeah, and part of that was also, No Man's Sky was very kind of secretive of what the game was. And we kind of did the opposite. We wanted to talk to our community more. Again, getting more intimate, we got more open. We were still curating things. We didn't show them everything. We didn't show like white box items. We definitely showed things that weren't complete. And it helped set the stage for our early access release too, because early access things are being broken, things are work in progress, but the core emotion of the game is still there for us. And everything looks great still. So we didn't mind showing them off, and it was a way of kind of sharing our passions with our community, our passion for gameplay and creating games, and what we were rewarded with was a very passionate, core, loyal fan base. And some other things we did, we got on YouTube, created developer Let's Plays of the game, explained stuff. We got on Twitch, played developer live streams of us making the game, whether it was design or creating content of art, and all those resonated really well. So yeah, again, with No Man's Sky, we were evaluating our bullet points. We believed in our game. We believed in the concept of the game. And so again, just doubling down on what that was. And so we can do what they aren't doing. Again, base building, intimate gameplay with planets, deformation, all like hitting our own bullet points again. That art that was very whimsical, very unique, very stylized, and pushing that core emotion that we really all wanted to do. It was like sharing these planets with your friends. So yeah, we stopped focusing on their strengths, like I was saying. I guess another example of that during that time was right around No Man's Sky's release was when we wanted to announce our launch date. And so we crafted this really nice trailer, and kind of part of the motivation was, so just like how The Martian came out and we utilized kind of those themes with our trailer and the story through the trailer, we utilized our differences to No Man's Sky so that people would stop comparing us as just the other game that's not as good as No Man's Sky. And so this is right after their kind of not so good launch. We really focused on base building and multiplayer components, and it really resonated well. And right after we released that trailer was kind of the tipping point when we used to be just the game that was sort of like No Man's Sky, and we stopped kind of having that comparison once we really honed in on and talked about our strengths. So yeah, as we kept pushing the stuff, just keeping that momentum up, right? And it's rinse and repeating all the gifts, talking to people, networking, and it's just kind of fostering our YouTube pool that we're going to later utilize later. So it's really important that it's kind of a long process. You don't want to just go up to them right when you need them to talk about your game and hope it, because that's probably going to be less effective as building a relationship that's long term, and then when you need them to talk about your game, they're going to be there and willing. So yeah, leveraging social media, just easy things, and it was all stuff that never took more than 5 minutes out of the day. So it was very quick things, never took away from making the game. It actually just, it made it easy, since once, as a small team that we were, once all of us kind of found something that was really cool and fun and interesting about the game, that was kind of the point where we knew, hey, that's time to share something. So, and again, it's authentic sharing, because we thought it was cool, and it's just sharing it almost on a regular basis to our community, and it really helped to grow things. And yeah, so yeah, just keeping that openness, keep networking, yeah, and gameplay first, everything else was second. So talking about trailers, that was one of the biggest impactful things that we did throughout our marketing plan. And that was, we did 3 major trailers during the the year we were marketing the game up until release. And it was kind of our big push to talk to a large audience in a short amount of time. And I guess I should give a background. I came from a AAA background, but before that, I actually was in the film industry for a short time. And a lot of my strengths were always film editing or audio editing and like kind of pacing and feeling things out. So back to how we leverage our strengths from the art side and the programming side, we also had the strength from my ability to kind of edit things together. And not everyone's going to have a team that has the ability to kind of really high quality edit something. So it's not a wrong thing to go with a third party and contract someone out if you don't feel confident in the ability or have the time to. But for us, we hand built these trailers. And there's a famous film editor named Walter Murch, and he has a book called In the Blink of an Eye, and he has this concept called the Rule of Six. And in the Rule of Six, he talks about kind of the hierarchical way of dealing with film editing and which key points should you be focused on. And it kind of goes through continuity, story rhythm, 2D space, all that stuff of which ones are more important when you edit a film. And I guess I'm going to subvert that into my 5 rules for video game trailers. And the first one was always emotion. We had the core emotional tone of the game from the get-go. And we always wanted to share that with our audience of these trailers. And so the number one goal of all of our trailers were make the audience feel something at the end of the trailer. It wasn't to sell them something, because again, that's not going to always be authentic or genuine, and the viewer is going to close down if they really feel like you're trying to sell something. And obviously, we are trying to sell something because it's a trailer, but we're also letting them feel an emotion while they watch it. And then story comes second. So sharing a story with someone through a trailer is critical, and that's going to make them focus and pay attention and kind of have a beginning, middle, end. Even if it's a 90-second trailer, it should have a beginning, middle, and end, and feel like you've gone through something. And then understanding. So that's something like, do they understand the concepts of the game? Does it look confusing? If it looks confusing, then it was always like up to us to adjust the way things were edited or way things were framed, because you don't want to present something and have it feel confusing. And then pacing is critical because you already won the battle of getting them to watch the trailer, and now it's just time to keep them from clicking away or going to another browser window or looking down from their phone or jumping ahead. So pacing was key of kind of having a rhythm to the trailer. And the last is gameplay, which is sort of crazy that it's so low on the list. It's almost the reverse of that, as if that's the kind of the key things of making a game. But gameplay comes last, I believe, when making a trailer. And that's because you're kind of naturally going to show gameplay anyways with your trailer. And there's a tendency of like, you have all these systems and everything. You worked really hard to get them like programmed in or whatever, and all the art and stuff in. But not everything needs to be showed. And it's going to feel cluttered. And again, it's going to screw up with the understanding or the pacing or the emotion. Because you don't want to just list, a trailer is not a bullet point of list of gameplay mechanics. So yeah, back to the motion. It's the most important aspect of creating a trailer. Before we really even began working on Astroneer, it was a core emotional idea of this person alone in space, and it kind of evolved into sharing that world with friends, and kind of not being alone in the universe. And so emotion was such a core aspect of what we felt about the game. Sharing that was really important, and putting that into the trailer. So also, emotion is a shareable experience. So when you feel emotion when watching a trailer, it's more likely that the viewer is going to tweet about it or go to the playground and tell their friend to watch it because they felt something, rather than, oh, I saw some cool gameplay. But if you actually feel something, you're more apt to kind of get that word of mouth coverage that we really, really cared about. And the good thing about emotion too is it transcends language barriers and cultural barriers usually. And since it's not just a bunch of text on screen, you really get more bang for your buck as far as how broad of an audience you're going to reach. And so I guess a quick little best practices I have for video game trailers that get to the action fast. You really only get about 10 seconds. Again, like the hard part is getting them to click on the video. You don't want to waste that click with a bunch of like your company logo or whatever that no one cares about or no one's ever heard of. You want to get to the action fast. And that's, again, knowing what your bullet points are. And since we knew those from the core, it's like, okay, how do we get to really great looking art, really great looking visuals? How fast can we get to that? And how fast can we get to the deformation mechanic of Astroneer? And so all of our trailers kind of just started, how fast can we get to that? And so yeah, that's why you need to know your strengths right away. And ending early is critical. You don't want to overstay your welcome. And really, my kind of best practice for time was 90 seconds to 2 minutes. And 2 minutes is really pushing it. And even 1 minute is fine. Usually, trailers that go on too long end up boring the viewer, and you might have interest in them early on, but now you're unselling the game to them if they get bored watching your thing. And so, don't want to repeat a lot either. So if you might have that great, amazing mechanic, but if you keep showing it off in a 2-minute video over and over again, maybe it's not as interesting as it used to be. So you definitely don't want to be repetitive in what kind of gameplay you're showing off or what kind of things you're showing off. And yeah, showing, don't telling. That's critical for these. And I'm very much against having very dialogue-heavy trailers that are explaining mechanics, that are kind of the VO narration that you see a lot of. And one of the downsides to that is on like a platform like Steam, videos autoplay, but typically I think they default to not having audio. So there's a good chance, whether it's from Steam or on social media, that your video is not going to have any audio with it. There's no music for it. So you have to actually build these trailers out to also be watched only visually and on a very small screen. So you don't want to have a lot of text overlays. You don't want to have narration because they might not even see that or hear that narration. And so yeah, trailers are a huge purchasing decision for people. And so you want to kind of have all this, like your highest quality stuff built into that trailer. And again, that's why we're kind of breaking our rule of like gameplay first when it came to trailers. We never made any new content for it, but we definitely spent more than like a day just kind of throwing some video footage together. It was a kind of iterative process that a few of us on the team kind of jumped into and worked on. So yeah, finding a large audience for us sort of came natural for some certain aspects of the game. And it's mainly due to we made a game for all ages. Some of us on the team have kids, and we wanted a game that they could play, but not exclusively a kid game. So by having a large demographic, we really improved our chances for success. And back to the little text, no UI, diegetic interface, all that kind of spelled really well for our demographic and our broad cultural appeal. At the same time, having little to no text really made localization really easy. I think we had like 300 strings total or something like that. It was so super small, super minute, and didn't really affect us that much, and allowed us to like reach a lot of regions and appeal to them. And the overall accessibility of the game really stood out. So that again stems from the strengths of the art style of the game, the look, the feel of everything, the softness, the whimsical nature of the game, and the diegetic interface of clicking things, and all that kind of added up into a game when shown, just visually made it look like a game that a lot of people can try out. And that's what we noticed early on at events like PAX or what have you. We were getting people that never played games to check out Astroneer because it looked safe. It looked very safe, and the way the game was designed, there was a lot of challenge in it, but the challenge was away from the safe zone of your base. So right off the bat, players could feel like they could just jump into it and not struggle. So it went really well, actually. Our YouTube strategy paid off really well. It was a massive success for us. We found that on average, all those channels that we were kind of researching and looking at, about whenever they did an Astroneer video, it performed 20% better than most videos. And that was really great for us because what we wanted to do was have these YouTube channels create multi-part Let's Plays for us. And when they looked at their channel and saw, hey, my Astroneer video actually gave me more viewers and I got a large audience out of it, I'm going to come back to it and play that again and make another video. And that really drove our sales. And we had a very, very long tail coming out of our release because every week there would be a new major release of a video back to back where people would not forget about the game. You'd hear about it multiple times. And it wasn't just a one Let's Play and you kind of never hear about the game again. And at the same time that people are watching these YouTube videos, again, they're a platform to create content rather than entertainment from the game itself. People would watch the game and see that and be, I want to play that with my friend. I want to experience that with my friend. So YouTube really pushed a lot of our sales numbers because of the multiplayer aspect of the game and just kind of the emergent gameplay that made a unique viewing experience. And so yeah, so it went well. We did in 2016. We were the top 100 best-selling games on Steam, and our release was December 16th. So we weren't really around for long to make that list, but we made it. So again, I guess the key factors of what made Astroneer successful, the kind of the bullet points, is you need a good game. None of this would have worked if we didn't focus on making gameplay our highest priority and making it look good and knowing our strengths and knowing what we wanted to talk about when we wanted to sell the game. So gameplay, or great marketing is really important, but having a good gameplay is critical to our success. Again, the art style was that thing, and it was something that we talked about a lot and what we wanted the game to look like 3 years ago, and it was that decision alone made our game stand out from a very large crowd. And yeah, so that's roughly it. I guess I can take questions. That went a little bit faster.
So I'll start the question. What platforms is Astroneer on?
It is on Xbox and PC.
And did you choose those platforms because you did research beforehand, or was the experience that your developers happened to have on hand? Why those platforms first?
Well, PC was always our main one because we wanted to release on Steam Early Access. That was kind of always been the plan. Xbox came later when we needed additional funding, and that we had a little bit additional time to release on that platform.
And what's next?
We're just kind of shooting for releasing on 1.0. So we've kind of shifted the way we're marketing the game again and really building the community. And because we did really well right off the bat, we're not really worried too much about selling copies of the game yet. We're more interested in building our game for 1.0 and doing another heavy release schedule.
I don't want to monopolize the questions. I'll sort of keep going. So you talked about your 5 rules for marketing videos. Yep. A notable missing for the end of that was a kind of a call to action. You didn't actually, the last screen was like, buy it here or do something here, or did you experiment with that?
No, absolutely. So the call to action is critical, right? You want the viewer then to do something. So the ultimate goal of those videos is they stop watching the trailer and they buy the game. And I guess if you don't have pre-orders or whatever when you do your announced trailer, maybe it's just subscribe to the game on Steam or follow us here or subscribe to the newsletter. But yeah, call to action is critical because you finish it with them hopefully interested in the game, and then you need them to do something else, right? And so usually it means, hey, buy this game.
Okay, well, last question. You gave lots of sort of great advice. Is there some lesson that you learned or something that went wrong? You said, well, I'm glad we learned that now, or can you advise us of things that shouldn't do?
One thing that I guess comes to mind is one of the things that we really thought was going to be a key component of our word-of-mouth approach of the game was the creativity aspect of Astroneer, because again, you can mold things, you can build things, shape things, and we thought it was going to be closer to how, I guess, in other creative building games, you have someone building the Star Trek Enterprise or something like that. And that never really resonated a ton with players, and I think part of that came from some of the gameplay was a little bit finicky on building complex things, and some of the tech wasn't quite there yet. So that didn't resonate quite well, but it's something that we could improve in the future.
Were you here for the presentations this morning about getting grants for education? I wonder whether you considered...
I missed that, no.
Did you actually consider trying to receive funds so this is more of an edutainment product rather than just purely sort of entertainment?
Not specifically there, but early on when we were building the game, we definitely were heavily looking for funding until we kind of did our own announcement. It did really well, and we were able to get private funding on our own and not need a publisher.
More questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, I just had a question about your looking at it over the steps. So first, just confirm if I understood it right. It sounds like it was a very kind of that organic word of mouth where you just started getting more and more traction. It was like the whole snowball effect over time on the different channels. And I was just wondering, you know, between all the channels and all the strategies, like, you know, YouTube, Twitter, going to expos or anything else you use, do you feel like there was anything in particular that it was a really good ROI or a really bad ROI? Or do you feel like everything was kind of equal?
Yeah, I guess there was no bad one. They're all worth kind of pursuing, but you can only have so much time in the day of what you pursue. Twitch was important to us, and it helped us really early on, but because Twitch play sessions were so much longer than like a normal YouTube session where it's like edited down into like 15 minutes to an hour, whereas Twitch playthrough, like Let's Plays usually last like 3 hours minimum to like 6 hours. The game doesn't have, at the early access state, the legs to stand on to allow for multiple Twitch sessions. Usually our Twitch streamers kind of died out less than a month in because they come back to it every day and they're streaming it, and usually 3 sessions of 6-hour sessions really like kind of suck up all the content for that early access game, whereas YouTube, since it's slower burn, they're putting out a video once a week. That was more value for us. Another downside of Twitch right now was the contact pages for Twitch. You can't really get information on how to reach out to those streamers, whereas YouTube kind of has the contact page right there in their channel. So it was easier to talk to YouTubers versus talk to Twitch streamers. But there was a lot of value early on, and it just kind of died out pretty soon.
So yeah, just to build on that question, like in what you just said about reaching out to the YouTube streamers, I'm just curious, like what kind of package did you put together when you made that initial contact so that you drew them in?
So right off the bat, it was when we announced the game, we actually got a flood of them interested in the game because they viewed it, Astroneer, as a platform that they could keep playing it. And so similar channels that have a lot of like crafting kind of mechanics or exploration or survival, they kind of saw us as, oh, cool, I can get in touch with them and maybe get an early build of it to show mine. So right off the bat, that's how they were talking to us. When we started talking to them, there wasn't really much of a package as much as, hey, we're going to be at PAX. We saw that you were at PAX. Let's chat. And it was never a ton of like the big ones, like a Markiplier or who have you. But it was the ones that are like the hardcore ones have a really solid core indie audience that we could talk to and usually got a response back. And it was usually just, hey, come by, play the game. We would love to hear your opinion. And it was never, hey, bring your camera, record this for us. It was always like, we want your help. We want to talk to you.
Would you include things like a GIF or a link to the press kit, or it's just strictly like
yeah, so when we really did do the like full-on release of the game, when we had that kind of email list already built up that people knew it was us, we released with a press kit so that they could create their own thumbnails that were interesting, then also, keys to the game. And kind of that core audience that we had early on, that was those YouTubers, we kind of reward them with a couple days extra before we actually release so that they kind of have a jump start, because for them, it's all about SEO of the search engine algorithm of like, hey, I want my thing to show up first when people search for Astroneer. And so that when we first released, those people that we kind of favored with that got a really good jump start on getting more views from their channel.
So one more question.
Yeah, sure.
Let's see one. Did you guys build anything into the game to attempt to sort of like, juice social media? I see some people are putting like GIF recording capability into the games and Twitch integration.
So no, and that could have helped us for some of that creativity that we might have missed. But we didn't have enough time. All those were like ideas that it's like, oh man, it'd be great to have a GIF creator or share this thing, and maybe later we'll be able to add those. But it was more of just what's our most best return on investment of time, and we did think that was kind of the best thing.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, another question about the Let's Play guys.
Sure.
I like that you admitted that it's not something that you really enjoyed, so it's hard to get into their head. Most indie devs are good at doing things that are passionate, and you weren't passionate about this, and I'm not passionate about the Let's Play either, so that's why I appreciate it. And it sounded like you did get into their heads and what their needs were, and so their need for content and SEO. Is there anything else sort of on the maybe psychologically what they're after
it was all that was really important because it was kind of a foreign environment to us, especially 3 years ago, and to get in their heads. It's I guess a lot of YouTubers, especially the ones that they're not really doing reviews, right? They're not reviewing Astroneer. They're just playing it and having fun, and kind of giving them a canvas almost for them to have fun was what was important, and that's kind of what their desire is. And it's not about, hey, let me just like burn through all this like content. It's like giving them things to make jokes off of or like springboard ideas. So one thing that we didn't have that that will come out later is like something like Ragdoll. Ragdoll is like very visually funny. It's something that they can laugh about if they screw up, or so a lot of these YouTubers aren't really great at playing games. They're not like these world-class esports playing people. They make mistakes. They screw up, but if they're able to leverage those mistakes or those deaths or like not managing their inventory properly into creative, funny content, that usually that actually really works well for their audience and entertaining them. So I think we always viewed Astroneer as that canvas that they can build things out of, and growing that game into that just naturally and organically, just kind of, it was more of a parallel effort of kind of, we're building the game, plus coincidentally it works really well for YouTube, so we'll focus on that.
Great, that's helpful, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, if we have no more questions, we have a round of applause for Riley. Thank you very much for the presentation. That's awesome.